Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana 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 Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya So it's 7, okay. Atanyo Boksyamanasya Vibhaktasya Mahipate Vibhaktam Vyabhajat Tasmai Vishalaya Harim Smaran Atanyo Boksyamanasya Vibhaktasya Mahipate Vibhaktam Vyabhajat Tasmai Vrishalaya Harim Smaran Atanyo Boksyamanasya Vibhaktasya Mahipate Vibhaktam Vyabhajat Tasmai Vrishalaya Harim Smaran. That's it. Okay. Ata, thereafter. Anya, another guest. Boksyamanasya, who is just about to eat. Vibhaktasya, after setting aside the share for the family. Mahipate, of the king. Vibhaktam, the food allotted for the family. Vyabhajat, he divided and distributed. Tasmai, unto him. Vrishalaya, unto a Shudra. Harim, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Smaran, remembering. Translation. Thereafter, having divided the remaining food with his relatives, Rantideva was just about to eat his own share when a Shuddha guest arrived. Seeing the Shuddha in relation with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, King Rantideva gave him also a share of the food. Purport. Because King Rantideva saw everyone as part of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he never distinguished between the Brahmana and the Shudra, the poor and the rich. Such equal vision is called Samadarshinaha, Pandita Samadarshinaha. One who has actually realized that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated in everyone's heart, and that every living entity is part of the Supreme Lord, does not make any distinction between the Brahmana and the Shudra, the poor, Daridra, and the rich, Dhani. Such a person sees all living beings equally and treats them equally without discrimination. So this is a very, important part of the devotional philosophy. But it has to be understood from the angle of devotion. Right? If it's understood from the angle of, political, social angles, then this point will not actually be understood. Is that the souls are all part and parcel of the Lord. You see them as non-different from the Lord. But, of course, there's a difference because they're servants. But the point is because of their connection with the Lord, that's what's then the qualifying position. So now, that means in your dealings with them in a situation, like this, an etiquette, you're not going to make any distinction. Right? Does that make sense? You're not going to make any distinction in that you're going to be respectful to everybody. Right? Does that make sense? Now, that doesn't mean that you don't make a distinction based on the nature of that aspect of the Supreme Lord that they're representing. It's just like Krishna is everything, right? So he's a frying pan and he's a knife. It's also him. The potency of the frying pan to fry things, the potency of the knife to cut things. That's Krishna. It's not coming from something else. Right? It's not the earth does that. It's the earth being empowered with that by the Lord. It does that. So there, when it comes to application in who does what, therefore the Brahmin will do Brahmin stuff, the Shudra will do Shudra stuff. So when we extend this vision, then the problem comes up is then it becomes impersonal because we're not making any distinction, right? So it's a matter of, is this personal indistinction or impersonal indistinction? So the modern political, that's impersonal. It doesn't matter what it is, you're going to deal with it the same. That's foolish because even the most liberal person does not do that in their own life, practical life. Does that make sense? They make a distinction, right? The car goes on the highway, and the bicycle goes in the bicycle path, and you walk on the sidewalk. Does that make sense? So if we take this to a further thing, then we're going to see if we apply this where it's all equal and it doesn't matter, then we get kind of like the Hollywood perspective, right? Because the car is always driving down the path where people walk, and there's always some guy walking on the highway, right? It makes for a great story, but as far as actual reality goes, it's not done. So we have to be able to make the distinction between it's all Krishna. Therefore, how do you apply these different positions? Right? It's all Krishna. So then how do you interact with Krishna in that position? Right? So as this etiquette and all that, someone's come to the house as a guest, you're dealing with them as the Supreme Lord because it says that the atiti or the guest is the Lord. Right? Matri Devo Bhava, Pitri Devo Bhava, Atiti Devo Bhava, right? So that's what it is. So the Atiti is also seen in that light of being the Supreme Lord. Right? So because of that, then That etiquette's there. He's not making the distinction, because in here it doesn't. There's no need to. Right? Just like, let's say we have a deity of Krishna. So you have a big deity and you have a small deity. It's not that you make any distinction. You offer bigger obeisances to the bigger deity and smaller ones to the smaller deity. Does that make sense? But in application, you make a distinction, because the main darshan is the big deity, and going out on parikrama and that's the small deity. So you're making a distinction, but making a distinction based on how Krishna's arranged it, how Krishna's made it. Right? That's how we are making a distinction. So when we apply we apply spiritual distinctions to the social platform, or social distinctions to the spiritual platform, then it doesn't work. We have to be able to tell the difference on what thing does what. Right? Does that make sense? That's the idea. So here, Rantidev, because of that position, whenever someone comes, then you're supposed to take care of the guest first. Right? When you have your food, then the first portion goes to the guest. Right? Does that make sense? Then after that, then it goes to dependents. Then after that, it goes to the family. All right? And so then he's taken it, so that portion is gone, to the Brahman, because they're the entity, but then also the Shudra, because he sees the Lord there. He sees in the same way, so he's getting that portion. Right? Then after, he'll reapportion what's left for the family. Right? Does that make sense? So this is how the distribution goes, is your responsibilities are first. Right? So for the grihasta, taking care of the guests is first. Right? Then after that, he's going to take care of the dependents like this. Then after that, then it's going to be himself and his wife like this. Does that make sense? If there's close friends or other relatives, they'll take with the family. They're not considered guests, because your good friend comes over, he's not an atiti. He eats with the family. Right? Does that make sense? It's just how the system works. So here because of his spiritual vision, he's seeing in this way. He's seeing everything connected to the Lord. Because we see here he's not making any endeavor for his own personal development. Right? As the king, he does whatever he's supposed to do, his duties, but he's not making any separate endeavor for his own facilities. He's just doing his kingly duties. So, yeah. So this aspect then is being appreciated here. And it's establishing this particular nature of his good qualities. We see that many times these qualities, these great kings have great qualities, and the demigods make some arrangement to just bring out the greatness of that. One, they test, because someone is so great, then they want to check for themselves, right? They hear through their sources that this king is very, very special, so they want to see for themselves. All right? And then when it proves that he is in that position, then they themselves will respect, and that'll bring the glory to that personality. But we see it's a regular occurring theme, like Markandeya, right? He's very powerful. Then Indra tests. Then when they figure out that he is of that standard, then they're all very respectful. Like that, they do that with Harishchandra. They do that with, who else do they do that with? Maharaj Shibi, right? I think that's, so it's a regular thing that they do. And from doing this, then it brings out the glories of the devotee, how special they are, how by the devotional potency, that's how they're like this. So it's not a separate endeavor. That's important. It means when we say we're practicing Krishna consciousness, then what we're trying to do means the standard is we're seeing everything that's in connection with Krishna. We're seeing connection with Krishna, how it's favorable to Krishna. Right? That's where we're starting. Then we're working back into that situation. What is that situation? What can that situation do? Right? Does that make sense? Let's say like you're in a kitchen. So if you start with, okay, we're starting with Krishna, pleasing Krishna. Right? And what's favorable to Krishna? Okay, so we're in the kitchen. What can you do with a kitchen that's favorable and pleasing to Krishna? So you can cook, right? So then we cook for Krishna, things that he likes. You understand? So it's not starting from the situation, it's starting from the service to Krishna in that situation. You understand? It's a reversal of what we're used to. Because we're always looking at it, okay, here's the situation. Automatically we're working for the main, the important element, which is ourself. So what can I gain from this situation for myself? Right? So we're used to that. So sadhana means now we're practicing doing it the other way around. Right? So in the beginning, maybe we may not think like that, but we situate ourselves like that. Right? Does that make sense? Even though we may not ourselves consider in that way, because we're so used to starting with ourselves, but we'll take things that are important to Krishna and put that first. Even though it's not, at a moment we think, yes, this is important for Krishna, so I'm going to do this. And what are we doing? We're doing that secondary activity. Now, overall, we're doing that secondary activity to please Krishna, right? But it's considered a sadhana, and that because we're still practicing, right? It's a vaidhi because we're doing it because we're supposed to, right? So therefore, then we get up in the morning because we're supposed to, right? Not that Brahma Muhurta is the best time of the day, so you should be doing the best stuff, and that best stuff is something spiritual. And of spiritual things, then that connection with Krishna as a person, and that then there is, then what are we going to do? Hear and chant and dance for Krishna. Right? So generally, when the alarm goes off in the morning, that may not be how our thought process is working. Does that make sense? The alarm goes off. Okay, it's Sunday. We don't have the other services, so we can chant later. So therefore, we could just get up that half an hour. Generally, that's how our thought process is working, right? Yeah. So does that make sense? So that's why it's called sadhana, because we're doing the things that are favorable for devotional service, and our ultimate purpose is to please Krishna. But it may not be that we're constantly at all moments thinking of its connection with Krishna. Does that make sense? So we have to be, we have to see is that these connections are important because they're connected to Krishna, not otherwise. Right? Does that make sense? So we start with the political position of equality, right? Then, and we're going to say, no, but it's good for everybody, because we're going to say is, everybody gets to do spiritual stuff. Okay? Nice. Okay. But how does that situation warrant? How would that situation play out? Right? Because we have to see it, everybody's getting the same equal thing. Right? Does that make sense? So then we have a problem, because with the externals of the situation, if we don't make discrimination, we can't actually apply ourselves personally to the situation. Does that make sense? So that's the difficulty, is that it's starting from the political platform, it's ending on the political platform, because Krishna may not come into it. Because if we take Krishna into, okay, so it's all equal, so now how is this going to be good for Krishna? How is it nice for Krishna? Right? Does that make sense? Let's say, okay, now let's say we are in the, a Western scenario, a more modern, up-to-beat, contemporary situation. Okay? Now, let's say you have a 12-year-old kid. There's a good chance the 12-year-old kid would like to drive. Right? Especially you have a cool car, right? Nice car, some, good car. They want to drive. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Now it's time to go to the airport, right? You have to catch a flight and that. Your guest is there, then, like this and that. So there's that, the guy, that 40-year-old guy that's been driving everybody to the airport since time immemorial, right? Like that. But you have this 12-year-old guy, but he's not that enthusiastic. He just does it. It's his duty. He can drive, and, it's what he's always done. So if you say, can you drive him to the airport? Yeah, of course. Yeah, like that. Let me check my schedule. Or, it's very, just standard. But now if you ask this kid, hey, would you like to drive this cool car and take this guy to the airport? He'll be very enthusiastic, right? So spontaneity is more important, right? The emotions, the feelings, and all these things like that, right? Rather than just the regular old ordinary day-to-day grind, right? Isn't it? So if we're going to deal equally, so this kid should get the spiritual opportunity of doing that service to the senior Vaishnavas by driving him to the airport. Right? So he's never driven before. He doesn't have a license. So who here would like him to drive you to the airport? Nobody. So that means you're all these discriminating, politically incorrect, don't care for anybody and their feelings and, what they want to do and that inspiration and all these things that you can go on for hours describing what they'll say in their political terms, but we're not going to get into, right? Why not? Because you're discriminating. Yes, he's enthusiastic, but then let him qualify. Does that make sense? So we have to be able to see the difference between spiritual equality and mundane political equality. Does that make sense? We have to make this distinction. If you're a Paramahamsa and all you're doing is chanting and walking around like Sukadeva Goswami, then you don't have to make the distinction, and we're not going to bother you about that. But if you're trying to organize things and manage things and all that kind of thing, you do have to make a distinction. Does that make sense? Like you have the family, there's a whole family there and all that, and you got to take them to the airport. And so, somebody, let's send them in the BMW Roadster, like that. A Roadster? It's got 2 seats. Right? Because it's not even 2 plus 2. It's just 2. That's it. Now, okay, you can put the kids in the trunk or something. I'm not sure, but you understand? Yeah. So you make distinctions. You have to be able to make. So that's on this place. So what we're trying to see is here, what's the difference? Why would I want everything politically to be equal? Right? Because we'll look at it and it's spiritual, right? Because generally speaking, in the modern context, if it has good qualities, it's spiritual. Right? If it's selfless, if it's working for the greater good, working for the community, it's spiritual by modern definition. Right? Because, how you say, selfish means it's just about yourself, so it has no good qualities. Right? But if you're giving that up for others, that renunciation, that consideration, that's spiritual. So therefore, it's considered a spiritual thing. But what's the basis of this political position? Right? I work on my own. How much can I get? If we all cooperate together, we can make more. And then that means the proportion that each of us will get will be more. Right? So therefore, the equality is, in this case, is based on that I'll have an opportunity to do the things that I want to get things from, even if I'm not qualified. But just because I want it, I want the opportunity that I can get it. Does that make sense? That's the foundation of this political thought process. Right? Because even if we say no, but we're talking about the soul. But you have to understand within mundane concepts, just having knowledge of the soul, that you are the soul, is not spiritual. You could say it's spiritual, but it's not spiritual within the transcendental concept of bhakti. Right? How does the karma kandi go to the heavenly planets and work very hard in this life for facilities he's not going to see this life, but he'll get next life? He knows he's not the body. How does the Kshatriya fight on the battlefield and he'll die in that process and he'll go down glorious? Right? You understand? So that's the thing. If a Kshatriya, dies, you want to know how he died. You know what I'm saying? How did that go down? How did he fight? Right? So how does he do that? Because he knows he's not the body, and then he'll go to the heavenly planets. You understand? So religion is something that supports bhakti. Right? Bhakti means devotion to Krishna. It's about Krishna. It's favorable to Krishna. Pure bhakti is bhakti. Right? Then we practice that. So now you're going to engage what? Religion in Krishna's service. So therefore the varnashram considerations, the austerity, the charity, the celibacy, the study of scriptures, these things we're going to engage in Krishna's service. Right? So therefore knowledge that we're not the body, we're transcendental to the material world, just that on its own is still not devotional. It may be considered within the spiritual. It's called jnana, so it's a jnanamoya platform of consciousness. But if the consciousness is there, it's still material. It's the best that you can get in the material. Right? Moksha is all you can get out of it. So it's the best you can get, but it's still material. So just throwing out, we're not this body, if the context is not devotional, but it's political, it's not spiritual. It's that simple. Dharma, artha, kama, and moksha are not the goals. They're not spiritual. Not any one of them are combination. But when they're engaged in the service of the Lord, that's when they take on their transcendental position. So you can't quote a mundane position and then claim that is the authority for the spiritual. You have to quote the spiritual to give the foundation for the spiritual. Does that make sense? It pleases Krishna. It's authorized by authority. The acharyas have given. Bhagavatam gives example of it. That's authority. But simply to use modern political positions and then say that's an authority because within our previous karma, then good qualities are considered spiritual, so therefore it's spiritual, therefore then I'm right, then what's the point? It has to be about pleasing Krishna. So you have to show, how does that please Krishna? Does that make sense? So it's a matter of qualification. Right? Everybody would like to go up on the altar and do something for the deities, but who can go? Someone who has second initiation. You have to qualify. It means everybody can develop themselves, but then you have to qualify. And they qualify according to their nature. Does that make sense? So just like, let's say we have someone who technically understands puja very nicely and has that patience, another person, two pujaris, and another person is very good with cloth and arrangements. Okay? So who dresses the deities? Who does the Shaligram puja? It's according to nature. Then another such pujari, he's very good at cooking. Not that all of them can't do the other things, but it's just that if you have then you situate them according to what they can do. Does that make sense? Or someone else is very good at cooking, but cooking for large numbers. So on a feast, then he comes in and cooks. But on the daily, he doesn't. Someone else is cooking. Does that make sense? So like that, you make distinction. Does that make sense? So we have to see is that it has to be based on what's favorable to Krishna. And so here, then we say, Ranti Dev, he's seeing everything connected to Krishna. He's seeing himself simply as a servant, and everybody else is representing Krishna. So in this case, that someone comes and you respect them as a guest, he's making that distinction. I mean, he's seeing in that way. So he doesn't have to make a distinction between whether they're Brahmin, a Shudra, or otherwise. Does that make sense? So we see is that this aspect is going on. So it's not a political, it's an actual spiritual position. It's a spiritual vision, which goes beyond the political, beyond the economic, beyond liberation. Right? Does that make sense? So, yes. So any questions or comments on this? Or? Do you have a mic?
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, in the case of Maharaj Ranti, we see that he did not endeavor to earn anything.
Yeah, so he just does his duties. It's just like this. Did Duryodhana endeavor to earn something? Did Karna endeavor to earn something? Right? Means, but Yudhishthira Maharaj, he just did his duties. He's not endeavoring separately to expand and gain and all this. He just, as a king, he manages the kingdom so that the citizens will be protected. And so it's nice. See, we always take it that he didn't make an endeavor for himself means he does absolutely nothing. Because we know basically two positions, right? We know vikarma and we know akarma. Akarma meaning no work. We don't know karma, which means doing your duties because this is the appropriate thing for your nature and the situation. And we don't know, okarma, which means beyond karma or transcendental. Right? Does that make sense? So we take it that I do nothing, I'm doing something. Does that make sense? But it's a matter of, so if I say he makes no endeavor for his own, that doesn't mean he's not performing his duties as a Kshatriya and therefore has facilities. But he's making no endeavor beyond that for something special. So what is required to perform his duties, that's what he has. He doesn't have beyond that.
Maharaj, in the similar point, just like the pastime of Lord Chaitanya comes when he's traveling from Shantipur to Puri, and on the way he asks, have you brought something with you to his associates? And everyone replied no, and Lord Chaitanya became very pleased. So basically, what's the difference between carelessness and depending upon the Lord, being irresponsible and...
It's like this. Lord Chaitanya is going as a sannyasi. They're coming with him as, assistants to a sannyasi. So are they do they need anything? You know, he's saying if you're going to use an extreme example, then you have to be able to think about within the context of the extreme example. You know what I'm saying? In other words, using the extreme example is always the natural first position we take in a discussion if it doesn't go our way. You have to find that one extreme example that applies in one particular situation and doesn't apply in any other, and you don't have a second example.
I just want to understand the concept.
Yes, so the point is that if the sannyasi is just depending upon the Lord, he's living by Amrita, then what's the need of having anything? The Lord will send. Right? But now a grihasta, he has duties. That's why you've taken on that ashram, is to perform those duties. But you're supposed to perform them for Krishna. So you're not doing them for yourself. It means a grihasta is supposed to have an occupation. Right? Now, if you're a Brahmin, and within being a Brahmin, then, you have an occupation within, something simple, like you give classes or something like that, or you do and then it's whatever comes along in that. And if nothing comes along, nothing comes. right? But the others, then their duties produce more. Kshatriyas produce more, Vaishyas produce more. You know what I'm saying? So irresponsible is you think, oh, I don't have to do anything. But then if you don't have to do anything, just like, okay, the husband doesn't have to do anything, he doesn't have to work. No, we just depend on Krishna. Now, will that same husband expect his wife to cook dinner? Because if you don't have to do anything, she doesn't have to cook either. She doesn't have to wash her clothes, clean the house. She just has to sit down and, following her husband. His husband sat down there and chanting. She just sits down there also and starts chanting. Right? Kids don't have to pass their exams. They just sit down and chant. And it's all good. So if you can do that, everything will be taken care of. But you understand? So these positions, we take these spiritual positions and then retranslate them into our normal vikarma and akarma positions. Right? Is that, oh, here I don't have to do anything. Right? Because why? Why would I not want to do anything? Right? Because there's two positions. I do something, I don't do something. Right? So what is the taste in doing something? Right? If we look at the point why people are here in the material world. Right? I am the controller. Right? And I do nothing means I'm the enjoyer. Right? Does the kid make dinner? No, because he's the enjoyer. But the mother makes dinner because she's the controller. You understand? And then she gets her taste from that. The kids are happy and things like that. Does that make sense? So when we're untrained, we think doing nothing is doing something. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that whole point is we have to be very, very careful is that we don't use these political positions, these philanthropic and all these kind of things, because as Prabhupada says, that's the natural next point after someone tries to get to the spiritual platform and that doesn't work, then they drop down to this philanthropic, altruistic platform. Right? So if we don't make it as spiritual, then the next thing we try to do is, make it nice for everybody and community and all those kind of things, which are naturally part of the society of devotees. But the society of devotees, it's being seen from how it pleases Krishna rather than the political position. We have to be able to see the difference between these two. Right? Otherwise, then we won't, if you can't tell the difference between a rope and a snake, you have a problem. Right? It means you can sit there with your little, instrument, your little Shanai thing, and go there forever and have your turban on and do the whole thing. And if it's a rope, it's not going to stand up. It's just not. No one's going to be impressed. No one's going to give you any money. Right? And if you have something you want to tie up and you pick up a snake, then it might not work out so great either. Somehow the snakes do not identify as ropes. They really don't like to be seen in that way. I mean, it's been going on for millions of years, and they really, really don't like it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the thing is you have to be able to tell what's the difference between qualities that are engaged in see, because qualities are secondary, right? Bhakti is primary. They can be supported by good qualities, by proper action, proper knowledge, right? So they're all secondary. So no matter how you look at it, qualities, no matter how great they're always secondary. But when they're engaged in pure devotion, at that point they become non-different. It means when the consciousness is pure devotion, then those secondary qualities with the primary, it becomes non-different. You know what I'm saying? Like that, yeah. So, does that make sense? Yeah. So now if you're working within the secondary and you're not looking at the primary, now you simply have knowledge, you have some skills, and you have some good qualities. Now within the secondary, the good qualities are going to be seen as superior. Right? So if I'm not seeing things spiritually, but I'm kind of still using that formula, then what's spiritual then drops down to the position of qualities. That's why fallen spiritual people take up philanthropic work. Does that make sense? It's a very straightforward, it's not a scientific, it's not we're just saying this and all. It's just the way it is. So either get in the fire of Krishna consciousness or you get into philanthropy. But in any case, philanthropy is better than being a Mayavadi, right? Because that's what Krishna says in the Gita. First is surrender. It's just the primary. If you can't, then see your position in the secondary, connect that to the Lord. If you can't do that, then, okay, do it because you want that in the secondary, but then connect it to the Lord. If you can't do that, just do the secondary, that a nice guy, be a good guy, do all the good qualities, be, give in charity, open hospitals, do all that kind of jazz. And if you can't do that, then at least in the impersonalist, there's kind of an idea of following scripture and stuff like that. But that's the bottom rung. It's just, that's the last, you avoid that one if you can. Does that make sense? So it's just natural. This is just how it naturally goes down. Literally. Yeah, so when we say it's going down, means it starts from up, from Krishna, it comes down from there. It's the descending process. Like that? Does that make sense? Yeah. So if someone's not using that, they're saying, hey, it's going down, but actually, no, it's actually going up because they're not starting with Krishna. So, yeah. So when you're around the cool dudes and they think they're so cool, but it's not connected to Krishna, they're not. Things aren't going down; it's going up. Yeah. But whether it actually gets up, and that's another thing. But yeah, well, we don't want to be too judgmental here. So. Okay, we're good. You all right? Okay. Yes. Here. Ah.
If the person has a devotion, but he doesn't have a good quality.
Person has devotion but not good qualities. And then a person has good qualities but no devotion, which is better?
You said that quality is secondary, definitely.
Yes, they're secondary. Yeah. Right. Right.
But qualities didn't manifest in them.
The qualities didn't manifest. So they're a devotee, they have faith in Krishna, but they don't necessarily have good qualities. So the point is can you separately endeavor to get good qualities? Right? And if you do, how long does that take? Right? It takes lifetimes. But by devotion, since good qualities are naturally just inherent in bhakti, if one continues bhakti for some time, the good qualities automatically manifest. So if they're not, it just means that there's some attachments or something that are blocking it. Right? So the problem is we're saying, oh, because he's so attached to this or that. So we're taking it that attachment to that thing is the bad thing. No, it's being attached to something other than Krishna is the bad thing. So if they see things connected to Krishna, then it starts working out. Because we'll say, oh, he's attached to that, he should give that up, rather than, no, he's attached to that connected to Krishna. And then with time, the good qualities develop, because you don't have another system for developing it. You know what I'm saying? Bhakti is how all these are developed, because where does the good qualities come from? Right? Krishna is a reservoir of good qualities, right? So now, because he's so famous for these good qualities, that fame spreads as the Brahman effulgence. It's the Brahman effulgence is the effulgence of his good qualities. So that means that Brahman pervades everything. So his qualities pervade everything. So it's only because of the connection to him. So therefore, either on the material platform, you follow Shastra and do the right thing, and then these material qualities will gradually develop. Right? You can't just make up your own idea of how to be good. Right? Does that make sense? You know, like the anarchist thinks he's blowing stuff up and he's good. But guaranteed he's not going to develop any good qualities. Right? Because it's not according to Scripture. So, therefore, it has to be according to Scripture. What's recommended, because the point is the qualities are Krishna's. So unless you please Krishna, how do you get good qualities? So you have to do what work he says you should do. Even if you don't see him involved in it, at least you see you're following Krishna's rules. Right? Then only you can develop. So just having a political stance on thing and just saying, oh, but we have to consider everybody. It's got like that. Well, why don't we consider these guys? Oh no, those guys are nonsense. What happened to considering everybody? Right? Does that make sense? So that's the whole thing. Is it's mundane. They're looking at the quality separate from Krishna, and thinking the quality on its own is glorious. Like the material world is glorious on its own, and by us working with it, we bring out the glory. But this is an age-old philosophy where God's created the universe, but He has nothing to do with it. Now man takes it and does something nice with it. It's a regular philosophy. So that's all this is that by us good qualities, we're going to make devotional service great again. Like that. You understand? See, it's like this. One person says we'll make something great again, and the liberals hate the guy, but then they'll say is by developing all these good qualities, we'll make devotional service great again. How is that logical? You're using the same formula. Does that make sense? So we have to be very, very careful here. Is that if they engage in favorable devotional service, then all the good qualities will develop. So then the point is can you see what is blocking his development of pure devotion? And if you can't, don't criticize. And if you can, then help. It doesn't mean you aren't careful about the association, but you can't criticize because you can't see the actual spiritual position, and you can do nothing about it. If you can't see what's the spiritual fault, we'll just say he's not nice to Vaishnavas. Okay, and why is not being nice to Vaishnavas a problem? Right? You understand? You have to be able to follow that all the way back. And let's say, of course it's all that, but unless you can explain it, how can you say? Does that make sense? Like adults, they know that, okay, between point A and point B, there may be 10 steps. A child just thinks there's only one step. That's why they're childish. So if we discuss things and we don't see the steps in between, how does that make us adult? Right? We have to remember, in mentality, at least according to the Vedic system, hormones don't make you an adult. It's an attitude that makes you an adult. That's why we see Shankaracharya taking sannyas at 6. But Maharaj Venu, even though he's the king, he's still a kid. Or Duryodhana. He just wants. Everybody proves to them it's not going to work. He tries for the kingdom, it's going to destroy him and everyone else. An adult would go, oh, okay, yeah, no, that's logical. So half a kingdom's better than being dead, right? But he won't go for that. No, I want the whole thing, but you won't get it. You will die. Everyone that you know will die. No one will be benefited. That will be your legacy, that you ushered in Kali Yuga. You're the man. You understand? That's childish. In the modern context, we won't say that, because when you're dealing in a society of children with raging hormones, then it's just standard. But if you're dealing with actual human society, then it's not enough. Does that make sense? So therefore, one should know. Or one can see he doesn't have, I don't know why, I can't help, so I'll be careful in association. I'll deal properly, but I won't, go out of my way to spend time. Does that make sense? So then that works, because then it puts in the con. Otherwise, it's just right and wrong based on, it's not a good he has no good qualities. But the point is these lack of good qualities is a shadow. Bhakti is actual light. It's real knowledge. And so are we going to put aside that for the other? They're devotees. So you see that they're engaged in what they do. You know, if it's a problem, you know, stick the bucket of halva over in the corner with its own spoon, sit him down over there and let him go for it. And everyone else will sit in the line. You know, because he can't wait. He can't not talk. He can't try to get more. So just give him a bucket. But by taking prasad, he will be purified. You understand? So you have to be able to see what's actually the problem. The problem is not, we'll take it, it's the lack of good qualities that's the problem. No, it's the lack of bhakti is the problem. Right? Does that make sense? Is that okay? Okay. Something else? No? We're good? Okay, Jai Ho. Grantharaj Shrimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda ki, Jainata Gaura Premanandi.